Well, good morning, everybody. It's day 5 of the National Wilderness Workshop. And it wasn't without its little hiccup. I'm assuming that all of you got the revised link from my email that I sent out last night. One of those unfortunate things where a link didn't quite catch when you do it. Hopefully everybody will find it and make their way here today. We will get started in a few minutes, or a minute or so. Again, this session of the workshop is really about feedback. We'll have an open mic. You can provide some feedback and meet and greet with other folks. And let me go ahead and kick us off here. I just wanted to reiterate why it's so critically important that we connect in with stewardship. You know, stewardship is really how we manage and connect people to the outdoors and to their public lands. Stewardship is how people make that connection, how they get involved, how they start to care about the world around them and the world that we're involved in, working in the public lands. So stewardship also can fill that gap between decreased federal funding and what the agencies are able to do. It inspires and trains that next generation of outdoor leaders. You know, a lot of us are starting to get gray haired or no hair, and we need to be bringing in new people who are willing to be stewards and enjoy the work and the lands that we're involved in. You can read the rest there. It's all critically important. It's all important for us to carry this forward into the future. Again, I think you've seen these a number of times for how we want to have a good virtual session. Oops. Hopefully it's been a good one. You'll get to tell me here in a minute or so what you've been thinking about this week. Oops. Uh-oh, there we go. And again, just another plug that if you haven't yet looked at our Wilderness Stewardship Advocacy webinars from this summer, they're available on our website. You can go and check them out, and we'd hope that you would do that. I think they provide a lot of good information, a lot of resources that you can use, you and your organization can use as you embark into the wilderness stewardship arena. So today our agenda is this coffee hour. We're going to have some surveys, some polls in a second. At noon Eastern time, we're going to start off with our Wilderness Stewardship Awards, both NWSA and the Forest Service. And Forest Service Awards will be joined by Chief Randy Moore. Then this afternoon at 2:15 and 3 o'clock, we'll be joined by 2 committee members from the House Natural Resources and the Senate Ag Committee. They'll explain to us what's going on in Congress with wilderness and how we as stewards can interact better with Congress. And then at 4 o'clock, we'll close out with Jay Erskine-Lusky, who's been very active in the LWCF movement, and get his take on conservation advocacy and what that's meant for the conservation agenda back in DC. We'll close out 5 o'clock with what comes next, and just hope everybody will stick around throughout the day for all of these activities. All right, I'm going to stop right there for now. And let's go ahead and do a first poll. We've got a quorum of folks here. So My first question for you. How many national wilderness workshops have you participated in? And again, if you're not seeing the poll, it may be because you don't have the most current Zoom client. So just feel free to enter your response into the chat so we have a record for it if you'd like. And again, feel free to chat with other people and to include comments that would be beneficial for everyone in the chat. Let's keep going. There's still a few more people that could add to the poll. Getting closer to everybody, but not quite. All right, I'll go ahead and share it. So this is interesting. So 6 of you say it's your first one. 6 have been to 2. 3 have been to 3. 4, 5, 6, and beyond have individual responses. Share those results. So I'm glad that we're getting a lot of newer folks, and I'm glad we've got folks that have stuck around with us for many, many years as well. I think it takes all to help make a community. So how would anybody, before I move to the next poll question, would anybody like to share their experiences in some of the past National Wilderness Workshops? Just raise your hand if you would like to share about what the National Wilderness Workshops have meant to you. Hey, Vicky, go ahead.
I have a memory of the 2016 National Wilderness Workshop in Missoula that is not exactly directly related to the event itself, and no fault of the event, but inextricably mixed up with my memories of it, namely that it occurred during the election time of November 2016. And while we were there at the event, the news came that a certain unmentionable person had been elected to serve as president, and everyone was stricken. I remember talking to some BLM people who were there, who even questioned whether they would retain their jobs, whether the BLM would be able to remain as an entity. Well, that's all behind us now, but at the time it was a pretty harrowing experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to share an experience from a past workshop? Bill.
Yeah, I think I'd go all the way back to, guess it was March of 2013, right? The first NWSA National Wilderness Workshop, which is what has become the National Wilderness Workshop, or the NWSA Annual Conference, I guess what we called it. For me, at that time, being relatively new to this community, that was a pretty amazing chance to meet some really cool people, and it started a lifelong friendship with Connie Myers. For me, we sat together on our way out to the Rainbow Mountain Wilderness for the day of stewardship, and I mean that's the reason I'm so excited for these to get back to being in person. This is very understandable why we're not now, and I hope that the pandemic someday we can use the term is behind us, but the sort of connections and personal friendships and professional relationships that get built in between the sessions when we're together, I think And while something like this coffee hour is great virtually, there's just no substitute for, having a beer or having a meal or whatever. Can't wait for that. But certainly that first one in Vegas was fun for me, and it was actually my first time to be involved in planning one of these. And I think I've only been a part of like 7 more of those since. So
It was actually in 2011, Bill. It was back.
oh, see, that's how old I am. You're right, March 2011. There you go.
Yeah.
Me, you, and Andrew Sure, I think, and Sharon Netherton were the some of the planning committee, if I remember right.
Yep, that was my first one for NWSA, and then my latest one. Jeff Randa, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Randy. My first workshop was last year, and I found it very interesting to listen to everyone talk about dealing with the pandemic and the surge of people wanting to use our trails, and to see people work through how do we deal with this post-pandemic or the new normal. I thought was very interesting to see people respond and change processes. And so to me, it's just kind of, as a newcomer to this industry, just listening to people rally around how do we improve things. And I just thought it was a great collection of ideas and thoughts last year. So that's my memory of last year.
All right, well, great. Well, let's put out another poll question here. How satisfied have you been with the quality and the content of the presentations this year? So tell us what you think so that we can make sure that we improve each year and get better or continue on. And if you can't see the poll, it's probably because you don't have the latest Zoom client. But please go ahead and participate in that. There's still 10 folks that haven't yet taken the poll. Give it one more minute here. And that they may not be at their desk right now. Okay, let's end it and share the results. So gratifying to me is as one of the planners, a mix of very satisfied and satisfied. Only a couple of neutrals, so I feel pretty good about that. Anybody like to share their thoughts on any of the presentations that really stood out to them in terms of quality or content? Raise your hand if you'd like to mention something about which session. Tara, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Tara with Friends in Nevada Wilderness. 3 of them really stuck out to me actually as giving inspiration and really actionable items that I can take away and implement. The ONDA individual stewardship, that one was really fascinating, just seeing how I really liked how she went through all her processes for creating a whole system to get people out there that otherwise wouldn't be able to get out. So that was kind of inspiring and kept me got me brainstorming about how we can start to implement that in our program. And the White Mountains Trail Coalition, that one just blew me away. She was so inspiring, so enthusiastic, really engaging, and again inspired me to start collaborating with our other partners, with other agency partners in our area. And lastly, the Bridge Project, their presentation was great. I loved their all their enthusiasm for their work, and definitely gave me some ideas that just next week, I'll be able to update my position descriptions and hopefully improve our diversity in our program.
All right, Sandy. Sandy Scrine.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'll echo what Tara said and add that I also liked the partnership one, the stories from Wild Wyoming, Scottman's Peak. I guess Tara did mention that. And the developing sustainable volunteer programs. The other thing I'd just like to say is, I don't know what the factor is, but I feel like this year and last year, both of the virtual years, we've had some really outstanding speakers. And I don't know if that's a factor of when you go in person, you're selecting between 2 or 3 different options. And so, you're maybe not, I don't know, you're maybe not getting the best one when you make your choices or something. Or if it's a factor of the travel, that because people aren't spending travel to go, or people who aren't able to spend travel to go do a 1 or 2 hour presentation, we're able to still engage them in this virtual environment. But it just feels like we have some really top-notch programs and speakers both this year and last year, but I think this year is even better than last year. So that's my comment. I don't know all the factors, but there's a contrast in my opinion.
All right, thank you, Sandy. Vicky Hoover, you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah, I was particularly impressed with Wednesday's offerings that dealt with pretty much inequity and the need for better justice for more, to broaden the wilderness community. And in particular, I want to point out Lisa Ronald's presentation on images of wilderness in communicating about wilderness that inadvertently perhaps accentuate some biases in who are the main wilderness users. And I thought that was very impressive and will certainly lead to some action on our part in a way to assure that we do better in the future.
All right. All right, Diana Christopoulos.
Yeah, this is my first time to come, and really I came because it was going to be in Roanoke and I was doing a presentation. So I didn't expect to stay engaged, especially with it being virtual. But I must say that the quality, in my opinion, has been virtually uniformly terrific. And the story that's going to stick the most in my mind were the stories that were told by the Black National Park Service ranger. That was fantastic to hear, and worth it all by itself. Thanks.
You're welcome. So this next poll question is somewhat similar, but I was trying to divide between the content and the speaker. So if you could give us a sense of how satisfied you were with the speakers and their ability to share their information, their ability to connect with the audience, and so forth. All right, we're maybe about halfway there. There's still a few more people that need to add to our poll, please. All right, looks like we've gotten everybody that wanted to contribute. Pretty much the same result. Very satisfied and satisfied carried the day. And thank you for that. Anybody would like to comment specifically? You've already mentioned some of the speakers, but any of the speakers that you appreciated very much, would like to hear from again, or hear some more from them? Anybody like to make a comment? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and assume that we heard what we were going to hear. Next question has to do with how relevant was the content of the National Wilderness Workshop to you and your organization? This is one where we tried to sort out, you know, a lot of great presentations, but did we really hit the mark in terms of providing what you as a wilderness steward or as an agency person would need to really do your job better, to provide the latest current information? You know, did we have the right mix of subjects that you would expect at a National Wilderness Workshop? About halfway there. Any other? Getting closer to the 3/4 mark. Get a few more people to take the poll, please. All right, looks like we, in terms of relevancy, we seem to be hitting on most cylinders. It looks like there's a couple of things we could maybe do better to make it more effective for some. Anybody have a comment about the relevancy? Any particular session that you're going to take home and immediately start to apply, or that will help you in your day-to-day? Anybody care to share? Raise your hand. You must need that cup of coffee. Tara, go ahead.
I'll chime in again. So I'll say that I think it helped, this whole stewardship and advocacy being hand in hand, the whole theme of the workshop was a really good takeaway for me, because I would say I didn't necessarily have that framework for my mindset going into this, but I'm definitely seeing ways how we can help make our trail crew members who are professional trail crew also feel and act as advocates when they're out in the field. I mean, they already are, but just giving them that title and purpose and everything was something I took away from this that I wasn't expecting. So thank you.
You bet. Jeff, Randa.
I was going to echo the same thing. Where our group, and I'm with the Poudre Wilderness Volunteers in Colorado, and our primary focus is stewardship and education. But the learning, I think, of this week was a nice blend to pick up tips on advocacy and how we can educate through that angle as well. So the learning for advocacy, I think, was very well done, Randy. So I think the blend of all three of those elements, I think, was pretty good for the week.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Sarah Rodriguez.
Hi all, Sarah Rodriguez. I'm based in New Mexico. I am pretty excited about digging deeper into learning about the indigenous peoples that stewarded this land before the Forest Service got it. And I'm definitely going to go to some local bookstores and coffee shops, see the resources that are available, and also talk to my tribal liaison and just really learn as much as I can to try to develop that relationship further and steward this land in a respectful way.
All All right, thank you. All right, a couple more questions here. This question has to do with how well we organize the workshop. Everything from the registration to the links to the communications that you got, the hosting, the moderation of the sessions. Tell us what you think. And I would say that if you had some issues or if there were some negative thoughts on the organization or any of the other things, posting, communications, whatever, send me a chat individually or send me a separate email so that we can improve upon it for the future. Couple more. All right, here are these results. A few more neutrals popping up, so you guys send us some notes, send me a message so we can understand what we need to do to get you up into the satisfied category. For the one folk that wasn't satisfied, let us know so that we can do a little better into the future. All right, let's see. We've got this question has to do with the technology. You know, we use Zoom, and does this work? Does it work well with the hosts and with the speakers? Always not sure what you're seeing on your end, though we're trying to make sure that we provide a good content with spotlighting for the speakers and a big display for the content. But how did we do? I know the first day I had my computer was too slow and I had some issues with being able to host. Hopefully that's gotten better on the last 4 days. Let us know. Again, if you're not been satisfied or neutral, tell us why, and so we can improve it for the future. There are these results. I think part of the technology is just not liking to have to be here virtually instead of being able to be face to face. But hopefully it's been it has sufficed in order to get the information across and to allow for interaction. 2 more questions here. Oh, Bill, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that it's not surprising, and it's the technology side that's been the challenge here for people. You know, this is no small endeavor to try to put this on. But I think even, you know, earlier I spoke about looking forward to being back in person because of the personal connections that go on. But as we put on the National Wilderness Skills Institute back in May, you know, what we're wrestling with is if that event's going to even continue once we can get back to doing in-person trainings. But the one benefit to having something like this is, and Diane Christopoulos spoke to this earlier, is we can get some really powerful speakers because we're virtual. Or I think Vicky spoke to it maybe, but we've got to figure out a way to combine the virtual and getting the technology out of the virtual with in-person events, so that in the future, when we are back in person, we still have a way in which people who can't maybe don't have the travel budget or can't get travel approval as a federal employee can still participate in things like the National Wilderness Workshop or the National Wilderness Skills Institute. So I think even when we're not planning one of these, we need to be digging hard on trying to figure out that technology side of things.
All right, thanks, Bill. All right, oh, Diane, okay, no. Any other comments about technology or organization that you'd like to share? All right, this next question is a value proposition. So how satisfied were you with the value that you received today versus the cost for participating? And I know some of you were on scholarships, but the rest of you had to pay something to come participate. So how satisfied are you? Did we give you a good value for your money, all things considered? All right. A couple more seconds here. All right. So by and large, people were very satisfied. That's good to know. Glad that we ended up with such high marks there. That's satisfying to me that we did meet the goal of providing a good quality National Wilderness Workshop. And so the last question I have for you guys, oh, if anybody wants to make a comment, please step up. The last one I have is pretty straightforward too. As we look to the future, would you come to a future National Wilderness Workshop, whether it be virtual or hopefully in person? All right, share these results. It looks pretty much a resounding yes, which is satisfying as well. And I certainly understand for those that depend on the content. Anybody would like to share? You're going to hear this afternoon about what the next future wilderness workshop is going to look like when Heather comes on at 5 tonight in our closeout to provide some thoughts about what we're going to be looking for in the year ahead. I think we're still planning between our two organizations. We still plan to carry this forward as a way of bringing the wilderness stewardship community together, sharing information, networking. If there's any additional thoughts people would like to share. And there's been a little bit of a chat thread. I'd like to tease out the difference between the meeting format versus the webinar format of Zoom. We went to a webinar format for many of the presentations, mainly as a way to kind of control the audience and be able to have a little bit better control over the presentation, whereas the meeting format actually has worked real well as well, with a little different energy behind it. So tell us what you think. Which format worked best for you, and what would you like to see in the future for these virtual sessions? Diana.
Yeah, I hadn't really used the webinar before. I had taught classes using the regular format. And the thing that I didn't like about the webinar was that we couldn't chat individually with other folks. There were people that I knew that were there that I couldn't connect with because we weren't in a live meeting, and I couldn't do it on the chat either. So I think it took away some of the functionality that Zoom has that can help replace you not being in a live meeting. Now I got used to it, but I did feel like the webinar was a little restrictive.
Okay. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I think Randy, I think the meeting is a little more administrative. You know, you have to have a little more administrative efforts put into it, but I think the ability to see who's in the room and, like, you know, be able to use that as a networking tool is helpful. And I do like the Q&A from a moderator's perspective and like a host perspective. I like that Q&A feature, and I'm wondering if there's an ability to have that in the meeting format as well. I don't know if there is, though.
Not that I'm aware of, which is one of the reasons for going to the webinar format for some of the sessions. And if Bill, go ahead.
Well, one way to combine both is to do the webinar format, but make sure that it isn't just a talking head, that you break into small groups so that people then can connect and have conversations. So it's a way to sort of do both. You have a webinar format where there's a focus on the presentation, but then create a component with breakout rooms so that people can have interaction with each other.
Okay. I'm just, I hadn't found it. If there's a way to do a breakout room in a webinar, I just hadn't found that option. You can do breakout rooms in the meetings, but not in the webinars that I've seen so far. But if there is a way, and if somebody knows a way to open up a webinar to allow the chat to speak to everybody, help me find those commands as well. All right, I'm not getting anybody else that wants to talk about those issues, so we've got a few minutes. Are there any other issues that people would like to talk about? We'll just allow for an open mic to give your perceptions, your thoughts about the workshop, your thoughts about wilderness stewardship in general, your thoughts about wilderness stewardship advocacy, if anybody would like to share with the group. Just raise your hand, we'll call on you.
I'll just
Vicky.
add that I appreciated the people who spoke to local and regional advocacy, and that it doesn't only have to be done at that high level in DC. So I made a to-do list for myself on a local level of some things that I want to do, and I just appreciated that encouragement that there's these different ways that you can go about it, and it doesn't just have to be at a national scope.
All right, thanks, Sandy. Vicky Hoover, you had your hand up. You might need to unmute, Vicky.
Okay, how's that? Okay, I just want to say, while the webinar content that I participated in and on the ones I went to was very good, I was frustrated only by the fact that you couldn't see at a webinar who else was there. And it would have been nice to have the chat available too, but it would have been just helpful to me and informative to know who else was participating. Other than that, it was great.
All right. Raise your hand if you'd like to speak up. Otherwise, I have another question for you, not a survey poll, but one of our planning objectives for this last year was to use the wilderness stewardship advocacy webinars as a way to get people interested and engaged in this topic, and have them come to Roanoke, continue to be engaged, and then to take a contingent of folks to Washington, D.C. to actually practice stewardship advocacy in the halls of Congress. Unfortunately, COVID did us in being able to go to Congress, but we're going to bring Congress to the meeting this afternoon with several committee representatives coming and speaking to us. But for the future, there's a group of us that would like to see a Wilderness Week reconstituted as a way of taking wilderness stewardship groups to Congress, to Capitol Hill, to do some one-on-one wilderness stewardship advocacy with our representatives, with members of Congress, with the committees, with staff. And how many of you would be interested in doing something like that in the future? Raise your hand if you'd be willing to participate in a Wilderness Week at some point in the future. I know there's lots of ifs, ands, or buts, but is that something that resonates with you, that you would feel comfortable participating in, or at least looking at, that would add a dimension to your organization that might be a benefit? Okay. At least 10, 12, 13 of you expressing some interest in doing something like that. Okay. All right. Anybody, you can go ahead and lower your hands. Anybody want to make a comment about a future Wilderness Week idea? What that would mean for you or your organization? Go ahead, Vicky.
Yeah, I think many of us, at least those in the NGO contingent, would benefit from being able to speak to congressional offices about how we need more funding for our wilderness management agencies to do their job well. Speaking to we don't often enough speak to that money aspect.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Definitely, for sure. I think the Partnership for the National Trail System has been really successful with their Hike the Hill efforts each year and securing funding for the National Scenic Historic Trail System. That's just a small component of public lands. How much more should the wilderness community be up there on Capitol Hill speaking out for the 111 million acres of wilderness that exists across the federal public land system? And yet we don't have that. And
right, even if when we do talk about managing the funding for managing the public lands, sometimes I think wilderness specifically gets short shrift in the minds of the members of Congress.
Yep, it does. Any other feedback for us? Any other thoughts you'd like to share? This again is an open mic. I don't think you just want to keep hearing me talk. So what would you like to share for the audience about wilderness stewardship advocacy, about the workshop?
I really enjoyed the presentation.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, sorry, I should have raised my hand.
That's okay. Go ahead, Steve, and then Randy Rasmussen.
I really enjoyed the presentation on the bridge project and the work that Sauls did with them, and how successful that was and how intentional that was, to give up the power and bring in more people of color in providing jobs. But I would like to see kind of how that could be incorporated to this format for planning and for presenting, and making sure the faces we see up front are less of, people that look like me and a lot of the people presenting here. And that kind of, as we were talking yesterday about the future of the 60th and the future of the the next workshops and things, how we could maybe learn from that bridge project and incorporate it into how we're reaching out to folks for these workshops and things like that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Randy Rasmussen.
Yeah, I particularly relish and support that idea of a lobbying presence in DC, led by NWSA and other partners, including our friends at the Wilderness Society, of course, as always, because it's that stewardship piece, and and very consistent with the theme here of this workshop, is that that's not talked about as much as the new designations. There was just a comment too about that in the chat. I mean, this is where we can really shine. This is the collective group that can really promote those concepts to staff, to members of Congress, and make the invitations to come out in the district, during breaks, to show them specifically some of the wilderness stewardship issues that we're dealing with, good and bad. That's been a good success for the backcountry horsemen, is taking folks out to the field and showing them the conditions, and when we're talking about wilderness and our passions for wilderness and all the benefits it provides, we really make some strong connections as a result of those meetings with staff in DC or even members of Congress, because when they're back in the state or district, we can rekindle that connection and really show them some things. So I think that NWSA is uniquely positioned to do that, and I heartily endorse and support that, Randy.
All right, thank you. Sandy.
Thanks. So I'm one of those people always jumping way ahead with, thinking of all the possibilities. So I think it'd be really interesting to set some goals for the 60th for stewardship. I don't know what the metrics would be exactly. Maybe it's something about, money raised, or increasing each of the agencies' contributions towards stewardship and advocacy and support for wilderness programs. Maybe it's the number of stewardship groups, so that every wilderness is, embraced by a stewardship group that can help the agency and the local area with stewardship. Or maybe it's something around engaging Indigenous people and reaching out to tribal groups and, making those connections stronger, like we've talked about this week. But I think you never know what you can achieve unless you set a goal and either hit it, exceed it, or fall short. At least you're striving towards a goal. So I'd encourage something like that.
Okay. Sarah Rodriguez again.
Yeah, I just wanted to come on and express a whole lot of gratitude and thanks for you guys putting this space on and giving us this opportunity to be together. Because I know in my work with the Forest Service so far, sometimes it can feel I feel very alone in my care for wilderness. And knowing that you fellow warriors are out there doing the good fight is just really encouraging and really lifts me back up every time we have one of these weeks or workshops or anything going on. So I'm so happy to be here and have you all to do this with.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. Anybody else? So Eric. Oh, Tara, before we get to Eric, let's see. Tara, let's go ahead and get your comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks as well. And I definitely enjoyed these coffee hours and getting to connect with everyone. And I'm looking forward to in the future connecting with people in person. But I was wondering if you all do any, like a couple months later, we could do another coffee hour with this group, or later in the year, and see how everyone's doing with all the information. I don't know if that's something you all do, or if it's something you'd be considered.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about what's upcoming with NWSA for the next year, but we do have a series of webinars, one a month, and we put coffee hours on periodically as the topics and subjects come up. We've got a number of them already planned for this winter and spring, and just kind of an open mic coffee hour, bringing the community together. That's something that we can definitely plan for. And I know the Society of Wilderness Stewardship is also doing a series of coffee hours throughout the year, about every other month or so is what is planned. So definitely something that we can do and be involved in. Eric Giebelstein, would you come on and share an announcement?
Oh, sure, Randy, thanks. Just wanted to spread the news and announce that we've hired a new executive director. And that person is Caitlin De Verona, who is on the call. We're so happy. Kate's been working with us since 2017. And she is gonna be an awesome leader for this organization. And I'm so happy to welcome her into the role. So Kate, do you want to say anything?
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for the announcement. Woo! I am super excited. It's just such an honor to lead such an integral and incredible organization. I love SAWS. I've been working with SAWS for the past 5 years, and I'm always just blown away by the talent we're able to recruit and the passionate people we're able to recruit to the organization to steward the wildest places here in the Southeast. My first introduction to wilderness was out west in Nevada 10 plus years ago. And I just think it's important to share that before I had been introduced to wilderness, I didn't have a big background in hiking or camping. It's just not what my parents took us out to do. And the reason I was able to kind of get in my foot in the door and make that connection to wilderness was I was at a job fair and I saw these 2 females holding their shovels, Carhartt pants, like, and they were recruiting for a trail crew position working in some of the most remote places in Nevada. And I think of that moment because I was able to see myself in that job, two females, 1 person of color. And I was able to say like, hey, maybe that is something I can do. Someone with no background or no knowledge of what wilderness was, no skills and how to make it out there, and just had such a transformational experience into wilderness. And that's something I hope to continue to offer here at SAWS. It's something I think we are talking about a lot here at this workshop, and something we should continue to strive to do, make sure that people are represented and see themselves out in these wild places and are inspired to continue to take care of them. So I have some big shoes to fill. Bill's on this call. He was the founder and former executive director of SAWS, and just thank you all for your support, and looking forward to getting started here. Thanks.
All right, well, we are real happy for you, Kate. And if you didn't know, Kate is also on our board of directors at the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance. So she'll be able to bring her leadership to our organization as well as we move forward into the next year. So I am going to go ahead and close the coffee hour down so that we can prepare for the next segment, which is the National Wilderness Stewardship Awards. I hope that all of you will come back and share the excitement and experience that we're going to provide for you with the award recipients. And I just hope that everybody will participate in that. We'll go ahead and get started in about 12 minutes or so, and talk to you soon.